Hey, how's it going?
Good, Matt.
We're here.
Happy to be here.
Have we done? We've done one of these before through your podcast, I think, haven't we?
We hosted a podcast at the Array office. You're the humble host.
We did one at Capital Factory as well.
We did one at Capital Factory as well.
But you've never done one where it's me, which is nice. My thing.
You're new to this podcast game.
Pretty
aren't
new.
you? Yeah.
I know how to talk.
Yeah.
But can I talk and listen?
I have learned doing podcasts improves your talking skills.
Mm-hmm. Because you've been doing quite a few now.
Yeah.
Because the ones you're doing, are they kind of associated with Capital Factory, or are they kind of your
My
thing?
My current
or?
podcast is produced by Capital Factory, yes.
Yeah.
And now, as of today, sponsored by South by Southwest.
Amazing.
Whose building we're sitting in right now.
Yeah, and this is a beautiful building,
It's
actually.
Fantastic building. I've remember hearing about this in the before times.
The before times.
But yeah, I've never been in here, so it's great to be in the South by Southwest Center.
Welcome. Capital Factory is not a terrible location either,
Doesn't
really.
suck.
No, it doesn't suck.
Yeah.
So I obviously know you really well. I think we've known each other for quite a few years now. I don't know. Is it 3 years? It's definitely 2.
I lose track, but it's been a minute.
But for everybody else that is hopefully listening to what we're talking about now, tell us about your background, where you came from, you've got a really interesting journey.
Yeah, it's been fun. I moved to Austin at a really good time and grew up in Michigan before that. Played ice hockey, was general degenerate high schooler. Moved to Austin to attend the University of Texas at Austin, and that's where I discovered entrepreneurship and really opened my eyes to the meaning that startups and venture capital can have on a community and unlocking prosperity and freedom, and primarily by interacting and meeting Bob Metcalf, Dr. Bob Metcalf, who is the professor of innovation at UT Austin. He's had a remarkable career. Most notably, he invented Ethernet.
That's amazing.
And commercialized Ethernet under the mentorship of Steve Jobs and other folks in Silicon Valley. And Dr. Metcalf introduced me to my boss now, Joshua Bayer, who's the CEO and founder of Capital Factory. I was one of the first students to take their class at UT. That led me to start a couple entrepreneurship organizations on campus.
What was the class that Josh did? It was entrepreneurship.
It's now called Longhorn Startup. At the time, it was called One Semester Startup.
Okay, so he's still doing it. That's amazing.
Still doing it. I attend every week and have pretty much for the over a decade since I took it. And so
that's
it's,
cool.
One of my favorite times of class. We also our podcast Austinpreneur is. We use the talks from the class for the podcast. We just had Bill Gurley come in, and he was on the podcast through that. So I really got my start in entrepreneurship at the University of Texas, and opening up that opportunity beyond the business school is really something that they tried to just keep to MBA students for a while, and that seemed counterintuitive considering how cross-disciplinary entrepreneurship is, and you need engineers, you need designers, you need artists, communicators, all these different people, and so you really need to infuse the entrepreneurial culture across the institution. So and then 2016, 2017, I joined the venture team at Capital Factory full time.
Is that straight out of college?
That was after a handful of bouts in the trenches. I work for a company, Favor Delivery, most notably, and
they sold to HEB, didn't they?
We sold to HEB.
Yeah.
That was a whole journey in and of itself. A couple other companies that crashed and burned pretty spectacularly. And then ended up at Capital Factory, built out our VC network there, and now lead our deal flow and our podcast.
That's amazing. So you didn't feel like you wanted to jump into entrepreneurship at that point for yourself? You were kind of like, I'm someone who's an operator.
I realized being an entrepreneur is hard, and it's also less glamorous than people may think. And it's a lot of doing the same thing over and over again and calling on customers and working with your dev team and a lot of cycles. And I think some people are really good at it. I'm better at being a connector, knowing a lot of people, knowing a lot of different things, tying them together. And I think the VC life is more suited. But at Capital Factory, I kind of have the best of both worlds, where we operate a fund, we invest once a week out of the fund, but we also have a major business and operation. We host thousands of events a year. We have enterprise customers. We have tens of thousands of square feet in real estate, and so there's definitely a big operator, 70-person team. So there's a big operational component to our venture structure, more so than a traditional firm.
What's your role actually called?
Venture principal is my job title.
Okay,
Yeah.
and so that's looking after all of the people. Is that just the companies that Capital Factory will go on to invest in, or is that also LPs and stuff?
I describe my job in 3 parts, and I lead a team that helps accomplish all 3 parts. And so leadership is a key piece of it. Management's a key piece. But one, we recruit the best startups to be part of Capital Factory, the best startups in Texas specifically. 2, we help those companies connect with investors who can participate in future funding rounds. 3, we tell the success story on our podcast. And so it's and that creates a virtuous cycle, which drives the good word of Capital Factory around the state, and it's, all the happy founders and people that hear about the success stories, attracts the next generation of startups and entrepreneurs that we partner with.
It's amazing. And actually, at the moment, Capital Factory is exclusively there to support Texas and the ecosystem of Texas. And they've got the Austin location, the San Antonio location. Is there a Dallas location?
We have a presence and a team and a portfolio in Dallas and Houston. We have facilities in San Antonio and Austin right now.
Yeah.
So, and we'll see how that all evolves. It's gotten complicated though. This workspace thing. Where are you headquarters? It's not as binary as it used to be.
No, it's not.
And so we work with entrepreneurs primarily based here, at least building here in Texas.
Yeah.
And that's what's become so commonplace. And, almost every startup out there is eyeing Texas in some way or another. And you might not be based here, but you're coming down here to work with the enterprises. We have more Fortune 500 headquarters in Austin than any other state, in Texas than any other state. We have 4 of the 10 largest cities in the United States right here, day's drive. And so I think everyone's trying to get into the action in Texas. And if you're coming down here and want to be part of our ecosystem, we'll work with you. So more and more, it's not necessarily a headquartered thing, but more of like, are you active? Are you working with especially our partners, the enterprise partners, the defense partners we have?
Yeah, I moved to Austin almost 5 years ago now, and I saw that.
Has it been 5 years already?
Yeah, dude,
wow.
It's ridiculous, and I love it though. And when I was moving, people were like, "Why are you going to Texas? Why are you going to Austin of all places?" Because obviously,
cowboys, you want to ride horses? And
exactly. I wanted to wear a cowboy hat and it be legit. It was mainly what I was into.
You can do that.
But it wasn't. So as I said, I've been here 5 years, but it wasn't. It was probably 6 years that we were like planning and figuring out where to go, and I was having those types of conversations. I say, well, look at it. I mean, San Francisco is massively overpriced, massively saturated, and New York is similar. So they were the main hubs that people looked at. But I looked at Austin. I was like, Austin has the potential. It used to have a Techstars office. I think it still does have a Techstars cohort here. I'm not. People tell me that.
I think just last week Techstars had demo day at Capital Factory.
Oh, nice. They used to have a space, didn't they, over on South Congress or whatever. But they had a Techstars. There was a Google headquarters here, a Facebook, an Apple. Apple expanding their presence. This is like 5-6 years ago, and this is before Joe Rogan and Elon Musk copied me and came over and moved over. Yeah. But I could see the writing was on the wall of like fertile ground for startups. And Austin has, like a lot of cities, has had its successes. Like San Antonio, would you say that's like rack space maybe? Yeah. And then we've had Silicon Labs here. Yeah. And it's made the money for the people and the residents and the citizens and create jobs. And you have to reinvest in the city to take it to the next decade and 20 years and 30 years and beyond. And Austin, I could see, was starting to do that because they were making a home for these bigger organizations, and more people have moved in. And I felt
catching our stride.
Yeah, and that was a weird one. Like, I met Capital Factory later than most, because most people, it's the first thing they can get bedded into the city.
We weren't the first thing you did?
No.
How rude.
It was pretty rude. I was just chilling out in the burbs for too long, just doing my thing.
It was fair enough.
But like, when people kind of hit Austin now, and I always try and get them to Capital Factory because it gets them connected.
Yes, you brought Richard Branson to Capital Factory.
Guilty.
Thanks for that, by the way.
No, it was the right thing to do. It was the right venue. It wasn't. I was friends with you guys and stuff, but it was the right place. It genuinely was the right place to have someone of that caliber.
Yeah, you can throw a stone anywhere in Austin and hit a startup. It's literally so pervasive. Where Capital Factory is like the physical manifestation of it, where it's like you can really see it and feel it, and it's our brand and our reputation. So we've become the welcome mat for Austin technology.
Yeah, so I know you guys got your ties with the Air Force and the military and stuff like that, but what are the things that you think Austin is like going to be more known for in the future? Like, what are the big startups that have made their way through your doors? I don't know if you had. I know we've had some of the big startups that I know of, like Icon and big game changing people. Maybe tell us about some of these people.
It's in 2017, the U.S. Army selected Austin and Capital Factory as the hub for their innovation efforts, and I won't totally dive all into that right now, but a big result of that is a very strong attraction of deep tech startups. And for a while there, Austin was an enterprise software town. We did very good at that with companies like WP Engine, Bazaar Voice, and the list goes on of that generation as enterprise software companies, and it's good. And then Army showed up, and all of a sudden you have roboticists and drones and post-quantum encryption companies and 3D printing house companies. There's all this crazy stuff that's like certainly more exhilarating and more fun. We think it's much better. We think it's also a great investment opportunity. I think it's we really don't look at it as like what is Austin going to be good at, but like what is Texas going to be good at, and we really view like you got to build these companies across the state. Austin brings this tech talent, this culture to the table, and a few big companies now, but the most of the Fortune 500 headquarters, the people that are buying products and making big investments are in Houston and Dallas, and you have 25 or more Fortune 500 headquarters in Houston. I think you have 30 or so in Dallas, and before the pandemic, New York was number one, and through some of the relocations like Oracle and McKesson that happened during the pandemic, Texas eclipsed them. And so long story short is, you don't have to leave Austin to find more startups, but you got to leave Austin to find more money. And
I've seen that.
Customers and the old money in Texas is in these other cities. These heavy industries are in these other cities, right? And like we think Texas does really well at these areas that traditional venture, at least as we know it, haven't participated in, right? And you look at the companies that came out of Silicon Valley in the last generation, Snapchat, Facebook, Uber, Lyft. These are very unregulated markets. Like we're in these highly regulated areas like healthcare, like energy and defense. We really think that's where we can win and where we can really break venture into, areas that traditionally you haven't seen a lot of venture investment. And so, like Icon 3D is a great example. Company at 3D printing houses, addressing housing crisis. Have built neighborhoods in third world countries and barracks for military groups. And
they're building some up in Georgetown, right by my house. So I get to sort of look at the progress each day, and they're pretty cool looking with the walls and stuff. And they're doing something I think on the moon, aren't they? Aren't they going to take moon dust?
It's the goal, the house on the moon is not the key thing. Is I think it's only going to cost $100,000.
So we could get in on it. Like we could put our property there. On
right. A lot of people could get in on it, and you think of what that could do to the housing market, and just drive some other prices down. It's pretty ridiculous what houses cost, and they through an introduction Capital Factory made ended up receiving a $77 million grant.
It's the largest
NASA.
CIBRS, or is it? I don't know if it's AFWorks or CIBRS, or which are the military grant program.
Right. Yeah,
but I heard it was like the largest one in history.
I don't know if this is the largest one in history. It's one of the largest we've received. There's different phases of these grants. And CIBR stands for Small Business Innovation and Research Grant. The money comes out of the National Science Foundation, but the authority to award it is distributed to various groups throughout the Department of Defense, Health and Human Services, but it's kind of the primary vehicle. There's some other things like STTRs, there's OTAs, there's a couple other structures. SIBR is the big popular one, and you kind of phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 SIBRs, and phase 1 is maybe 50, 100,000, and it's like a million, and it's like the big one. I think the phase 3 they call them like StratFi and TACFi, and those are like the big suckers. And
I think it's 71 million, and then
something like
then
that.
all bets are off.
Right, and the fun part about that award is they're using it to develop the first human habitat on the moon, and they in their office have synthetic lunar regolith, which is essentially moon dust, that they're testing how they can essentially like create the compounds to build houses on the moon from moon dust, right? Because it's very expensive to get stuff off of Earth.
Yeah.
And so the more we can facilitate off-world construction, the better our chances are to be a space-bearing species.
That's so cool.
I know, it's pretty badass.
It's weird. Like Austin has had this. I'm a history geeky person, and Austin's had this like relationship with Air Force for a long time.
That's right.
And
Austin Bergstrom Airport used to be an Air Force base.
It did.
I'm sorry. Can we time out for a second?
Yeah.
I need to get a little. I have a situation.
You have a situation. It's all good. If you you just got spilled. If someone does like get a bit loud, I mean, you've got our back, right? I don't think it'd pick up on these mics, but no, I was doing one of these podcasts with Corey from Waste Drive.
Yeah, you got a great cast here.
What do you mean?
I love all these people.
No, he's going to do one, but I did his one. So
you did Corey. Yeah.
But he's going to do mine. He has already agreed. He's just not in today.
Considering all the other people that you have on,
You got to get Corey. But
it's so nice up here. I'm like,
I had a cough attack on his. I'm like, dude, stop.
Oh, you
Because
did?
I had this thing that was going on for a while, and it was just like really bad cough that I could not stop. When it was coming, it was like like this, and then I have to go and really just go for it. I say, pause. I was like, yeah.
I was at this like fancy induction ceremony for the honor society at UT that I'm a part of. And this girl just had a total cough attack in the middle of it, like up in
Really?
front of everybody.
That's what mine would have been like.
Yeah.
I almost had it with Richard.
Right.
Because like it was around that time I think that I was having this cough issue, and I was like trying my best just to sort of try and get a bit of fluid in my mouth to sort of just stop, just to ease it.
Yeah.
And there was a girl sitting next to me, and I was like, I didn't want to, because Richard's talking. I'm like, can I just have a drink? She's like, what, you weirdo? I just had like lipstick on it and stuff. I'm like, I need it. Yeah, otherwise I was just gonna go.
That's funny.
Where do we leave off? We were saying that
we're talking about off-world construction. Before we move on from that, what's exciting about that area for us is we have a handful of companies that are part of the Artemis program, which is the United States effort to get humans back on the moon. Slightly behind schedule, but the plan is to have our company, another company that's part of that, Intuitive Machines, is expecting to land on the moon in January. They have a lunar lander that's funded by NASA. Even it's like hundreds of millions of dollars. They call it Commercial Lunar Payload Services business, and
that's NASA. Yeah, that's not Space Force.
That's it is through NASA. But what's unique about what Intuitive Machines is doing is it's not a NASA mission. Like it's a private mission to Mars, where every other, or not to Mars,
to the moon.
To the moon.
Yeah.
Mars is next, but and previously it was a NASA mission, and so it's like you think of like a private sector company versus like a big government agency managing a big expensive project. Like you're going to just have a lot of inefficiencies, you're going to have a lot of delays, and so this is a unique thing where it's actually the government's licensed a mission to Intuitive Machines and is actually a customer of Intuitive Machines. So yeah, that'll be interesting, and hopefully they'll land on the moon. The company's public. You can buy stock on NASDAQ and go to the moon.
That's amazing, because that's that kind of collusion's a bad word, but that collaboration between government and private,
That's right.
private,
Right.
you know, that's what SpaceX has been doing, and that's what's made it a
Yep.
lot easier
Yeah,
to
no,
do stuff. And
SpaceX
SpaceX is not far from here either.
Nope, SpaceX is not far from here, and has certainly changed the whole game and made all this possible. Really.
Yeah, and that's what I was getting at. Like, we've always had this relationship. I say we. I'm the 5-year person, but like Austin has had this relationship with the Air Force, which is always, you know,
Yep.
and it's come back with space this time.
That's right.
And I've met some of the Space Force guys, and like, oh, what do you do apart from GPS? And no one knows, but
Yeah.
that's the excitement part.
Right. Yeah, one of the co-founders of Intuitive Machines, Two Fish, he was a general in Space Force before this. Yeah, and they have Space Works and AFWorks, which are the innovation units of those two respective groups. And I think they're essentially operate together.
There's an interesting thing there, because like what me and this guy were talking about from Space Force was about the culture, because every there's jokes about how every wing of the army, or the military, sorry, has its own personality, and it's usually down to the age of it. The Navy or and we were debating, is the Navy or the Army older in America? I know, but I think it's the Navy. I could be wrong. Google it.
I don't want to.
But like,
I know the
you
Air
would think the
Force
Army
spun out of the Army. I don't
Yeah.
know.
But usually the Air Force is the newest arm of any country.
Right.
But now we have Space Force, which is really cool. And so at the moment, I think they're pulling people from wherever the great people are, and probably the Air Force. But we're going to have this new culture to the Space Force, and we're going to see this cultural shift in Austin as well, between these innovative companies and the Space Force and all this stuff. It's just going to be an interesting place to be, for sure.
The times they are changing.
Yep.
You will see where it all goes. It's I think the question is Austin entering or exiting its golden age?
That's the question. The demographic and the feel of it is changing even from when I've been here.
Yeah.
And I know I moved here because I did want to be in Texas and I did want to be in Austin.
Right.
So that's why I'm here. But yeah, I mean, we've all Austinites have always complained about the traffic, but now it's a real thing. And I think the city's putting a lot of good infrastructure improvements as best they can, but it's just going to change.
It's going to change for sure.
Yeah. So what you were talking to me before we properly started rolling about the stuff that's going on with the education side of things.
Yep.
and these announcements that Capital Factory involved in, and you've been instrumental in. So tell me more about that.
It's exciting times. And, at core, like I mentioned, I really got my start in startups at the University of Texas, and view entrepreneurship, especially at the time, not necessarily as a way to build a multi-billion-dollar company, but really a vehicle for learning. And what do entrepreneurs do every day? They learn, they figure out new problems. Like every time you conquer one stage, you're on to the next. It's a whole new problem set, and it's self-directed, right? And so you kind of have these paths laid out for you as a student that were drawn up by some board at the state that went to school 50 years ago, and it felt uncompelling, unengaging.
It's made by academics.
Traditional academics, and I don't think I'm alone in saying that school's boring in a lot of cases. And entrepreneurship creates this experiential learning opportunity, and it allows students to say, hey, I want to go tackle whatever problem they want, whether it's blackouts in their hometown in India, whether it's cybersecurity of AI and the new AI age, or and so and then you really go and talk and you get direct experience. And I was always proponent of that. I always have been. I think it's not just the best way to teach entrepreneurship. It's just the best way to learn, period.
Yeah.
And especially for people that maybe come from less privileged backgrounds that want to unlock different opportunities for themselves, and entrepreneurship does that as well, right? And it allows you to get into these areas, become a thought leader, be the founder, the CEO, get on podcasts. No one takes the entry level Deloitte consultant on a podcast, but they take the person who just graduated and is going all in on a problem they want to solve. You're going to listen to that and become successful and open doors. And I was really excited a couple years ago when people came to town and launched a new university, or started launching a new university called the University of Austin. I think none of us know too much exactly what it'll look like, but they describe themselves as a private liberal arts college, private liberal arts and entrepreneurship college.
Right.
And the fun, exciting news we just had at Capital Factory, they launched, did their launch party at Capital Factory. They received their accreditation to be a university from the Texas Higher Education Board, which is a really big thing. Tier 1 accreditation. It's the first accreditation of its time to be granted in over 100 years.
Oh, wow.
And you know, certainly here in Austin, there's one big university. I'm partial to it, the University of Texas.
Yeah.
But
That's not
you
good
look at other tech hubs, other cultural hubs, almost every other hub you can think of, there's a lot of universities, right? And it's not just owned by one big one, state. You go to Boston, for example, you have MIT, you have Harvard, you have Boston University, Babson, right? All you go to Silicon Valley, you have Stanford, and University of California is a major system. A lot of these groups, right, are there, and so I think that's we're taking that step in Austin, and I hope there's many more universities to come in Austin.
So they're approaching education in a different way, or in a more entrepreneurial way.
There's kind of like they have a unique blend of the old and the new. And they do have this emphasis on returning to a classical liberal education, exploring free, independent thought, and controversial.
That'll work well in Texas.
We're here in Texas, but I think across the country you're seeing pushback on not so independent thought at universities, like it or not. I think those people are right, and I think that a lot of universities become extremely politicized, especially state-run institutions. The University of Texas is an example of that. Even more so, it's right down the hall from the state capitol, and
which is out a window here. Actually,
you can see it out.
Yeah,
we could probably see both the university and the Capitol, and there's always been a lot of politics. Even when I was a student, there's a lot of politics involved. And
to some people, that's an appeal. They want to move away into politics, and that can be helpful. But
I think you should be able to enter politics, but not kind of have the institution impress their politics upon you.
100%. And obviously, we've seen a lot of that over the last few years, and the education stuff is something that's close to my heart. Like, it's something I think a lot about as well. I didn't go to university or college. I just went into entrepreneurship pretty much straight away because I was very dyslexic at school, still am. And so, and you don't have to be dyslexic or kind of neurodiverse to not get on with just memorizing information and not. I think creative problem solving comes from entrepreneurship. Yeah. And a lot of dyslexic people like me and Richard Branson and Einstein, they look at things in different ways because they had to, because they couldn't just memorize stuff. And
I mean, this is a perfect example of how these institutions have created social constructs around mental health, and who's to say what's divergent and what's convergent, right?
Yeah.
And over the last 100 years, these institutions have decided, if you act this way, you got to go on medicine. If you don't act this way, you got to go on medicine.
If I'd grown up in America, I'd be on one of the ADHD medicines. For sure.
No doubt about it. You're lucky you're not. I think that's a great example where these institutions have created ideals that aren't serving the individual, and I don't really think a lot of those. Certainly there are appropriate times for those type of medicines. I'm not saying, but I think it's and by and far they're prescribed much more to help parents reduce the stress of their ADHD child, right? And it's like, I have a child, I can't control them. They're always so hyper. They're always doing X, Y, Z. Okay, we'll give them this medicine. They won't bother you anymore.
Yeah.
Right? But like, is that the right thing for the patient? And I don't think in a lot of cases it has. And I think it's been oversubscribed and so prescribed. Oversubscribed. That's what we like to do.
Yeah, we get some subscribers.
I agree. I think that's kind of interesting.
I think there's an awakening, and like COVID has also accelerated that because people, universities went online, so people were like, it's hard on. I'm just doing a Zoom call and I'm still paying this money. And And then there's a lot more people who went into homeschooling, and a lot more homeschools are like they have pods that like communities that get together. They're massively oversubscribed. I'm bumping into more and more entrepreneurs who are building technology tools to better help people homeschool, and homeschooling is got its own genres. There's all sorts of different types of programs of what you subscribe to.
Yep.
Elon Musk and their team have created a school for their staff and their kids. So people are like now having more confidence to do that. I do a talk on this type of stuff. Like when I get asked to do a talk, it's one of my little things I go to, and I say that you have. The Industrial Revolution needed standardization of education. So as we were like going into cotton mills or whatever it was, we needed to standardize education. But now, and that was because you had to learn a very specific way, and we all had like a standardization. And then when I went to school, which wasn't in the 1800s or the whatever, there was teachers saying to me, Matt, like you need to learn this mental arithmetic because you're not going to have a calculator in your pocket. Every day. I was like, well, no, joke's on you. I actually do. But like, obviously, having an encyclopedia in your pocket and having a calculator in your pocket has got us so far. And now we come into the world of AI. Who do we need to lead the charge? It's creative thinkers. Creative thinkers who think things differently. They're not like how many things can I memorize. It's like how can we solve this problem in a unique way and leverage tools like AI or whatever it might be to actually come up with a more humanistic solution than ever before. I think it's exciting.
It's very exciting. It's another eye-opening thing for you to say is in a lot of ways the Industrial Revolution put a square peg in a round hole, right?
Yeah,
and like
100%.
The Industrial Revolution needed trade schools, right? And it's a different type of education than
the apprentice,
a liberal arts college, right?
Yeah.
Like a liberal education is something that was designed for the aristocracy in your homeland of Europe, right? And so that wealthy people could go to cocktail parties and sound smart. Right. It wasn't to help you go work every day, right?
No.
Like it's if you want to go work in a factory every day, you probably don't need to learn, history of this random country across the world, and so, I think that's part of it is you need technical skills, and we need to lean into that, and we don't. But also, I think the liberal education is something that is we've put it into that box of like trying to make it like we're churning out finance analysts for Wall Street, we're churning out consultants and stuff like that. But really the essence is more just giving someone the tools to entertain ideas they don't agree with in any arena and with people that aren't like them, and having discussions, making decisions, and then solving problems. And so I think you need this. You're going to need something very different for the AI age, and I think even now we need something a little different than we have. And I think this University of Austin seems to be very focused on returning to this classical liberal education that is kind of the roots of these schools like Harvard and Oxford and everything that we've built on.
Those brands you speak of, Harvard and Oxford and Cambridge and things like that, they hopefully will start counting for a little less, because there's a lot of smart people who are not IQ smart or academically, but are super sharp, amazing problem solvers, and they'll be indistinguishable with AI backing them up.
Yeah, it's been shaken up. Like you said, the homeschool, online education, entrepreneurial education. These are all new systems, like outside of the traditional institution. I think now we're actually seeing like the state of Texas is declaring a new university. There's a lot of other things happening across the state to reform higher education, and I think that's what should be happening.
Amazing, man. I think that's good. Thanks for your time today. That's
Thank
awesome.
you.
We could just keep talking. Yeah, man. Thanks
all
for
right.
See you soon.